Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's reading of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Remember where we left off yesterday. So our story was back with Edmund. And do you remember what was happening to Edmund? I asked you to guess what you thought was going on and what was happening with Edmund and the witch and the dwarf. What do you think? I think she was probably getting ready to kill him, right? Because she tied him to the tree and exposed his neck and pulled his hair back. And what sound did he hear? Do you remember? It was a whiz, whiz, whiz of a knife being sharpened. That's right. So that's where we left off yesterday. We are going to find out what happens to Edmund today. So then he realized it was the sound of a knife being sharpened. At that very moment, he heard loud shouts from every direction, a drumming of hoofs and a beating of wings, a scream from the witch, confusion all around him. And then he found he was being untied. Strong arms were around him, and he heard big, kind voices saying things like, "Let him lie down, give him some water, drink this, steady now, you'll be all right in a minute." And I'm going to show you the picture. Who do you think is coming to his rescue and untied him? Could it be maybe the animals that Aslan sent at the end of the last chapter? Maybe so. Maybe they finally found where the White Witch was. Then he heard the voices of people who were not talking to him, but to one another. And they were saying things like, "Who's got the witch? I thought you had her. I didn't see her after I knocked the knife out of her hand. I was after the dwarf. Do you mean to say she's escaped? A chap can't mind everything at once. What's that? Oh, sorry, it's only an old stump." But just at this point, Edmund went off in a dead faint. Soon, the centaurs and unicorns and deer and birds, they were, of course, the rescue party which Aslan had sent in the last chapter, all set off to go back to the stone table, carrying Edmund with them. If they could have seen what happened in the valley after they had gone, I think they might have been surprised. It was perfectly still, and presently the moon grew bright. If you had been there, you would have seen the moonlight shining on an old tree stump and on a fair-sized boulder. But if you had gone on looking, you would gradually have begun to think that there was something odd about both the stump and the boulder. And next, you would have thought that the stump did look really remarkably like a little fat man crouching on the ground. And if you had watched long enough, you would have seen the stump walk across to the boulder and the boulder sit up and begin talking to the stump. For in reality, the stump and the boulder were simply the witch and the dwarf. For it was part of her magic that she could make things look like what they aren't. And she had the presence of mind to do so at the very moment when the knife was knocked out of her hand. She had kept hold of her wand, so it had been kept safe too. When the other children woke up next morning, they had been sleeping on piles of cushions in the pavilion. The first thing they heard from Mrs. Beaver was that their brother had been rescued and brought into camp late last night, and was at that moment with Aslan. As soon as they had breakfast, they all went out, and there they saw Aslan and Edmund walking together in the dewy grass, apart from the rest of the court. There is no need to tell you, and no one ever heard, what Aslan was saying, but it was a conversation which Edmund never forgot. As the others drew nearer, Aslan turned to meet them, bringing Edmund with him. "Here is your brother," he said, "and there is no need to talk to him about what is past." Edmund shook hands with each of the others and said to each of them in turn, "I'm sorry." And everyone said, "That's all right." And then everyone wanted very hard to say something which would make it quite clear that they were all friends with him again, something ordinary and natural. And of course, no one could think of anything in the world to say. But before they had time to feel really awkward, one of the leopards approached Aslan and said, "Sire, there is a messenger from the enemy who craves your audience." "Let him approach," said Aslan. The leopard went away and soon returned, leading the witch's dwarf. "What is your message, son of Earth?" asked Aslan. The Queen of Narnia and Empress of the Lone Islands desires a safe conduct to come and speak with you, said the dwarf, on a matter which is as much to your advantage as to hers. Queen of Narnia, indeed, said Mr. Beaver, of all the cheek. Peace, Beaver, said Aslan. All names will soon be restored to their proper owners. In the meantime, we will not dispute about them. Tell your mistress, Son of Earth, that I grant her safe conduct on condition that she leaves her wand behind her at that great oak. This was agreed to, and 2 leopards went back with the dwarf to see that the conditions were properly carried out. But supposing she turns the 2 leopards into stone, whispered Lucy to Peter. I think the same idea had occurred to the leopards themselves. At any rate, as they walked off, their fur was all standing up on their backs and their tails were bristling like a cat's when it sees a strange dog. It'll be all right, whispered Peter in reply. He wouldn't send them if it weren't. Okay, friends, we will stop there for today. Think about what you think is happening right now. The Queen of Narnia, or the White Witch, wants to meet with Aslan. Why? Think about that tonight and tomorrow, and then we will find out what their meeting is about when we finish off chapter 13 tomorrow. I will see you then. Bye.